this week we're going to be starting to look at management accounting. Now, management accounting is all about the provision of information for management decisions. So it's about detailed information that management need when they're running the business in order to make business decisions. So the first type of management accounting that we're going to look at is costing. Now it's really important for any business that it has a handle on its costs. Businesses need to know how much it costs to produce their output, to produce their goods and their services. Because if they haven't got a good handle on their costs, they won't know whether they're going to make a profit or not. And remember, accountants like to make profits. So it's important for us as management accountants to understand how costs behave. And when we say behave, we mean how they behave in relation to the volume of output, the number of units we produce, whether those are goods or services, because different costs behave in different ways. Now, we classify our costs in two main ways. We have what are called fixed costs, and we also have variable costs. Now, the clue's in the name. The fixed costs are fixed in relation to how many units we produce. In other words, we can increase the amount of units we produce or decrease the amount of units we produce, and those fixed costs will still stay the same. Now, fixed costs are typically what we sometimes call overheads of a business. They don't relate directly to production. So they could, for example, be rent of a factory or an industrial unit or some other premises that we need for our business. So the typical textbook example is rent. Once we've rented a building and we've signed the lease, we have to pay that rent whether we produce any units of output or not. So that rent doesn't vary depending on how much we decide to produce, and that's why it's fixed. Now, the variable costs are those which do vary in relation to the number of units we produce. For example, raw materials. Let's just assume we've got a business making shoes. Our raw material might be leather or plastic. Now, the more shoes we make, the more leather we have to buy. There's a direct relationship between the number of units produced and the cost of raw materials. The more we produce, the more materials we have to pay for. If we cut back on production, we pay for less raw materials. So that's the classic example of a variable cost. Now, it's important for us to understand this cost behaviour because it's part of what accountants call cost volume profit analysis. The relationship between cost, volume, the number of units we produce, and the amount of profit that we make. And I said earlier, accountants are really keen on profit, so we like to understand this relationship. Now, another useful thing that we can do once we start to understand how our costs behave with relation to our volume and how profit comes out of that relationship is that we can start to look at what's called break-even analysis. Now, break-even is the level of production where the business makes neither a profit nor a loss. And this is a critical piece of business information. Now, one way to understand break-even is to draw a break-even chart. So, draw my break-even chart. I'm going to have pounds up here on this axis, and I'm going to have the units of output. In other words, how much we produce on this axis. And the first thing I'm going to draw on there is our total costs. Remember, total costs the total cost of producing a level of output is the total of the fixed costs and the variable costs of production. We can draw our total cost line on the chart, and I've labelled it TC for total cost. And that's what our total cost line looks like. If we produce 0, no units of output, we still have a certain amount of cost, and that's our fixed costs. Remember, we still have to pay the rent even if we don't produce any shoes. And then every time we produce more units of output, we have more variable costs to pay, so our total cost goes up. In order to understand break-even though, we need to consider not only total cost but total revenue, because we're looking for the point where the level of output, where total cost is equal to total revenue. That's where the business breaks even and makes neither a profit nor a loss. Now, our total revenue line which I put on my chart in red and labelled TR, is a straight line through 0. If we make 0 units of output, we have no revenue. We've got nothing to sell. Total revenue is quite simply price times quantity. Price times quantity sold. So it's our selling price times the number of units that we sell. The more units we produce, the higher our total revenue. So, having worked out that we can show the total revenue and the total cost on a really simple chart, we're now in a position to work out our break-even. Now, our break-even occurs here. It's at that level of output, because that's where our total cost line and our total revenue line intersect. They meet each other. And at this level of output, we have neither a profit nor a loss. Total revenue equals total cost, therefore profit is 0. You might think, why would we want to draw a break-even chart? What's so helpful about this? Well, it helps us when we're planning, because once we know what our break-even level of output is, we can then see whether we're planning a level of output higher than break-even. So up here, planning a level of output here, we're making a profit. We're making a profit because our total revenue is greater than our total cost. That's good. If, on the other hand, we're planning a level of output down here, we're making a loss because here our total revenue is less than our total cost. And this is the kind of analysis that management accountants need to do to make sure that a business is going to survive. We don't want to be planning to make a loss. Now, you may not wish to draw a chart. You may wish to work out your break-even using a simple formula. And we can calculate break-even draw the break-even formula. Break-even is equal to total fixed costs divided by sales revenue per unit minus variable cost per unit. I'll put a bracket around that, I think. So we just do a calculation of break-even, total fixed cost of production divided by sales revenue per unit minus variable cost per unit. And that bottom line here is what's called contribution. Now, contribution, sales revenue per unit minus variable cost per unit, is another key idea in management accounting that we use for all sorts of analysis. It's called contribution because we're saying that this figure is the contribution that units of output are making to covering the fixed costs and making a profit. So that's where the name comes from. So if you're trying to work out your break-even for your business, you just need to remember break-even, total fixed costs divided by contribution per unit. I think that's enough for today. So thank you very much for watching.